Mike. Mike, good afternoon. Welcome. How are you?
Afternoon. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well, and yeah, thanks for having me on, and thanks for the invitation.
Of course. Yeah, you're very welcome. I love at the start of a conversation to just ask whoever's joining me to introduce themselves. I know some of your background by speaking with you a little bit and your website and talking with you a little bit now, but I love to just go ahead and ask you to just introduce yourself. What brings Mike, here today? We can just jump into, some of the things that you do to help others move towards higher vibrations. But tell me about Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, I guess I can start with the basic initial details. So, I'm 35 years old. I'm from Winchester in the UK. I'm south of England, and essentially, I guess our paths have crossed through my X account or page on there, Akeso Sobriety, which is basically sort of my company and my page that I run and set up probably about 18 months ago now,
Okay.
just to help people in their, I guess, sort of journey to conquer alcohol or to successfully, become sober or basically sort of remodel, review the way and the relationship they have with alcohol to basically improve their life moving forward. It's a sort of a battle and journey that I've been on personally. With my own struggles and low points and everything like that, and I've had to overcome it. And ultimately, through that, I guess we're sort of forged in our own fires, and through that, you then, as a result, want to try and help other people to experience the same transformation, positive transformation to change their life, which for me has been life changing, remarkable. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me in terms of the, I guess, bigger picture with the company. I've got a website. I wrote and spent quite a significant amount of time writing 3 programs for people
Hmm.
to go through. There's a sort of a short, ephemeral 30-day program, which is more
Right.
of a circuit breaker that someone can do just to sort of take a bit of a break. It's called, it literally does what it says on the tin. It's the circuit breaker. So they can just have a little bit of a break from alcohol, a bit of a reset. And
Yeah.
then there's the 60-day program, which is a bit more sort of, a longer stint for someone to maybe just try and realign if they're a bit sober curious, to take a little bit of a sort of break from alcohol to see if that's something they want to do enduringly. And then the final piece to that is the 90-day program, which is for people that are really looking to,
Right.
sort of kick kick alcohol out of their lives and take a step towards being sober permanently. So that's basically what I offer, and I sort of work with people on a bespoke basis and sort of take them through the programs. And I go on that journey with them, and they count the days. I count the days with them, and we just go together. And that's what I find. Like, a lot of people are just looking for a little bit of support. Um,
Right.
to get going and to get those initial miles under their feet, and just to lay that foundation. And yeah, it's been amazing. So it's been amazing, rewarding. But that's a little bit about me. I post every day on X. That's been my pledge, my mission. It's just to post every single day, no matter what, because I love the content that I see that other people put out, and I can only hope that I instill the same positive feelings for other people when they might see a post of mine, and it just sort of helps. It could be that they're just not feeling, tip top that day, or there's maybe sort of thoughts creeping back in, negative thoughts, and they can see it. And I know from my personal experience that sometimes you can see something and it could just change your outlook instantly for the better.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a little bit about sort of where I'm at the moment with it all.
That's wonderful, Mike. I definitely want to dig into the different programs and kind of the differences between them. I do want to ask you and kind of move towards this. I know you have talked about your story even on your website, and I find when I talk with people like yourself, when they want to help, and I don't know if you've heard this, but I've come to realize that a final stage, or at least a later stage of healing for yourself or for me, you
Yeah,
want to convert that into helping others, right? You've gotten
yeah,
to a point, and it might not be, quote, finished or fixed or whatever, but you get to a point where you have so much gratitude for what you were able to do for yourself or what other people have helped you, you want to turn that around and help others. And
Yeah.
that's you, Mike, sharing your light outward, and it reflects back. So I would say it's much more than hope, Mike. I'm sure that you have helped a lot of people, and you will. Can you tell me about your story? Like what brought you in these 35 years? If you want to kind of, maybe just sort of delve into it in whatever level you're comfortable with, kind of what brought you to this? What were your struggles that you had specifically with alcohol? I'm guessing that's probably the addiction that was the biggest. I have that too. So I'll share a little bit of mine, but I want to hear about yours as well.
Yeah, so I mean, much like everyone, my story was individual, unique to me in a sense. I think alcohol was something that was probably a part of my life from maybe sort of 15, 16 years old. My background is slightly interesting in the sense that I've always been very musical.
Okay.
And believe it or not, I went and studied music at music college, graduated with a music degree. I went and played music full time. And that was my work. That's what I did. That was literally the gig.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
by virtue of that, I was inadvertently around alcohol all the time. It
Right.
never stopped. I was at
Right.
venues, hotels. I was hanging out with other musicians, and we all, aspired to be rock stars and all that sort of stuff. And I completely acclimatized to being around alcohol and thinking that was normal.
Right.
So from maybe my, sort of secondary school, college years. There was a lot of drinking, partying, playing music and, being in bands and all that sort of stuff. And then being around venues, bars, and just became sort of indoctrinated to it all and thought that that was just how life was meant to be. Every so often, something would sort of come up in my life as a reminder that it wasn't drinking alcohol like I wasn't particularly conducive to a good life. Like
Right.
I lost my drive. I had a driving ban when I was 18 years old for drink driving and things like that. So there's these early signs that this is probably not the path you want to go down.
Right.
It wasn't serving me. It wasn't serving my life. But against that, I definitely thought it was just part of life, and drinking alcohol was hand in hand in socializing and celebrating, commiserating, and everything in between. It really was. And
Yeah.
that was, I guess, a lot down to my social circle at the time as well. It's what we did. It's what we continue to do for a long time. The big moment for me was when I realized I probably had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. Was I graduated university, so I had my music degree in hand, and I was ready to go do my first professional, job really as a drummer. I was a drummer, so
Okay.
um, I took a contract and I went out to Greece and Europe, and I was playing hotels out there, and we're playing sort of high end resorts and doing different hotels every night, and we played almost the entire season, every single night performing, rarely having a day off, a week off. And around that was just complimentary alcohol all the time. I was drinking all the time. I didn't have anywhere or, to be during the day. I had no responsibilities. I literally had to wake up whenever, probably
Yeah.
pack up the car around 6 in the afternoon, go
Right.
set up the gear at the hotel. We'd eat at the hotel. And then we'd get changed, play the show for a couple of hours, and come back. And then once we were sort of back at the our apartments, would then proceed to go out and drink at the local bars and stuff like that. And everyone was holidaying, so it was this jovial, sort of happy atmosphere all the
Yeah.
time. Sort of the jubilation of being surrounded by all the other holiday makers. You get caught up in that. And what essentially happened is I came home from that environment, and I remember really like the penny dropped. I was struggling to acclimatize to, I guess, sort of a normal routine, a normal way of life,
Right.
and I just got into a bad habit of drinking every day,
Yeah.
and that's what it was. It was something that um, it sort of that habit stuck, and eventually it grew, and sort of a 4 pack of beers turns into five, six, and then you end up, the weekends going harder and heavier and further. And then you end up sort of drinking to relief, or release the sort of give relief to the negative symptoms as a consequence of drinking alcohol in the first place.
Right.
And it crept into my life as a result of that. And it was very much whilst all this was going on and while the music thing was going on, alcohol was very much endorsed in that
Yeah.
lifestyle, and it was part and parcel of it. No one ever questioned anything. When I came back, I did get a few questions. I remember, seeing some people and asking. I didn't drive at that stage for obvious reasons, but I remember someone giving me a lift back from work once, and I said, "Could I get dropped off at the shop?" And they say, "Oh, why do you want to get dropped off at the shop?" I said, "Oh, I need going to pick up some drinks tonight." And they're like, "Well, what are you doing tonight?" I said, "It's a Thursday night." I was like, "Well,
Right.
just going to have a few drinks." And
It's
they
just
sort of questioned it and challenged it, and these things came in, and eventually, yeah, the habit just got worse. The outcomes um, became worse, and I ended up sort of in a bad place with my mental health, anxiety, and during the COVID lockdowns and stuff, I was not in a healthy place for it at
yeah.
all. I just took that as a reason to, go sort of carte blanche with my drinking and alcohol, and ended up in a very sort of negative place because of it. And eventually, one thing led to another, and I remember sort of being sitting at home one morning. I can't remember what it was, but I'd woken up and I was drinking. I used to go for cider. That used to be, I guess, my poison, if you
You go
like. And
to.
I remember drinking some cans of that in the morning at home, sitting at the dining table and just thinking, what am I doing here?
Right.
This
Right.
is it. That was like a rock bottom for me. I'd lost friends. I'd lost my confidence. I'd become so insular and isolated. Um, and that was the moment where I thought there's two ways this goes. You either carry on going where you're going and you go nowhere fast, and this gets worse and it gets more out of hand, and you continue to lose more, um, or you have to take the other path and you have to face this head on.
Yeah.
And it's that admission, I guess. And there's relief in that. There's relief in that moment where you say, yeah, this is a problem now for me, and I need to do something about it. The issue that I had then, and this is why I'm trying to do what I do now, is I
Yeah.
didn't know where to go from there.
Right.
And a lot of the people I speak to from the US, a lot of my followers are from the US on
Hmm.
X, which I love, and I always love hearing everyone's stories. But AA is quite well. I presume it to be quite prevalent out there and available. It's almost, it's like a people have access to that. But in the
Right.
UK, I wouldn't even know where to begin. I mean, yes, you can probably go online, but I wouldn't know where to find a meeting. It's not something that we really have that's, I guess, widely in circulation, or there's not that awareness of it.
Right.
So my first steps to trying to work out how to make this change and to try and move forward without alcohol in my life, which complete trial and error. And a lot of it came from YouTube. There's a guy that I was watching on there called Sober Leon, and his video I still watch him to this day are amazing. And there was some information, some knowledge, and the realization. Hang on, like people are doing this, and this is a thing, and I can do
Right.
it too. But I didn't really, other than that, nowhere else to go. So that's what I'm trying to do a little bit now for people, is to give people, to shine a bit of a light on it, that actually this way
Yeah.
of living, it is a good life and it is okay. And there's no stigma to do that. And there's no weakness in admitting that you've had that problem, because at the end of the day, alcohol is an addictive substance. People get addicted either to the
Right.
substance or to the effects that it causes to us, um, and that was basically that moment for me. And I tried and failed many times to get to where I am
Yeah.
now. But the biggest and best thing I did, and it was a lot to to do with willpower at that stage. But I set myself a target of doing 90 days, and I actually did 89 in the end. I mean, it was
Wow.
so
What
close. I mean,
happened?
not.
May
I
I
know.
ask what you're like? Well, I'm almost there. I mean, I can see it from here. So
It
let's
was.
just call it 90.
I think it was like it was a Saturday afternoon or evening, and
Right.
I thought, you know what, near as damn it done it.
Right.
I'm going to have a couple of beers. Two things happened at that stage.
Yeah.
The first thing is that I got a taste of what it was like on the other side. That was the longest period of abstinence I'd had in my life since I was probably maybe 14, 15, something like that.
Yeah.
And there were moments where it just felt amazing. I had a taste of what life could be like. The second thing is, and I still keep this up here to this very day, is that thought and of what happened when I did have that drink. It wasn't what I wanted it to be, and
Yeah.
that was powerful. And that's a powerful reminder for me today. Now, actually, I seldom get tempted or cravings. I actually have had a few earlier this year. Maybe it's something about the spring coming in and doing a few more things socially. It happens, but I always hold on to that and remember that and think, you know what, whatever it is up there is
Right.
going to be different in reality. It's not going to scratch that itch. It's not going to be what you want it to be. It's not going to give
No,
you
it's
what you want
not.
it to give you. So that was basically what happened, and there was probably about a period of probably a year, 18 months. I was trying to maybe I think in the back of my mind, I was trying to move towards being sober. But
Right.
I gave myself a couple of get out of jail free cards, and
Couple
I
grace
remember,
periods.
yeah, grace periods, yeah, and things like Christmas was a weird one to tackle, and
Right.
my best friend's birthday, I remember, and actually that was the last time I drank. It was my best friend's birthday, back in well, it must have been 2.5 years ago now,
Yeah.
and um, I let myself off for those occasions, and I thought, how can I reconcile with not drinking on such events that they've
Right.
always been
How am I going
revolved.
to have fun now? I mean, what am I going to do? Am I going to look weird if if I'm around alcohol and I'm okay, but everyone else is like, what's up with him? That kind of thing.
That's exactly it. And then actually what happened at the end of that night was the same thing that happened at at the end of most other nights, and that was, feeling worse aware,
Right.
regretful, tired. I also had a bit of a problem, particularly in um, my last years of drinking, where I would black out and have very um, I'd have periods of like a blackout in my memory, in my mind,
Right.
and that just it terrified me. I never used to be like that, and it just started coming on. And when it came on, it started happening more frequently and frequently. And I would just start, just losing my memory. I'd not remember things. I'd not be able to recount or recall where I was, who I was with, and that just terrified me. And
Yeah.
it was just another one of those, another night I couldn't remember, and I just that for me was just it. It was the final straw. And I'd had these, I guess, laid these foundations before that of doing a 60-day, a 90-day, maybe even sort of 6 months up to that point. And I just thought, what, I can do this. And actually,
Yeah.
it's again that relief that you almost have when you admit, okay, I've got a problem with alcohol. I felt that same thing again, and almost that same euphoria, saying to myself, do you know what? All in. It's
Right.
all or nothing now, and
Beautiful.
that's it. And that was it. And I didn't go back from there. I didn't look back. I haven't looked back from there. And that's how I view it now. It's all or nothing. This is my life, and gradually as you go and you progress, you bear the fruit of that, and you
Yeah.
you see the benefits that come with time. And it's not always easy. It's not. You can have many hard days, but the better days outnumber the hard ones. I mean, there's a lovely saying, isn't it, that my as a drinker, um, my worst days in sobriety are still better than my
Right.
best days as a drinker or as an
Yeah.
alcoholic, and that sort of resonates with me. And the better days vastly outnumber the worst ones. And now I'm in a position where good things are happening, and it's not just been quitting alcohol that's been the catalyst for that. It's what I try to explain and elucidate to people that I work with is that you need to build a life around you that supports your sobriety and that complements
Yeah.
it. It needs to be a match for it. And that for
Right.
me has been built around things like, the community, that's a big one. So, I love talking to people on X and, talking to people such as yourself and sharing our experiences. But also it's been things like looking after my body, training in the gym, looking after my mind, learning, reading, and engaging in fulfilling meaningful relationships with my family and those other people in my life. And all those things sustain me, and they bring me joy, pleasure, stimulation. And now all of those are worth so much more than a drink ever would be. And that is in itself is deterrent enough for me to sort of keep my resolve, because I've gained too much to go back. And I
Right.
found, beauty in simple things that I never thought possible, that I would have deemed boring or, ridiculous, such as
Right.
having, sipping a coffee in bed on a Sunday morning, reading a book. That to me now that's one of my favorite moments. And before, I would have, if I've probably watching this video in the past and seen myself in the future, I would have probably sort of
Right.
laughed mockingly, thinking like, what?
Well, yeah, I think in general, or at least I can describe my situation. I think if you're unsure of feeling comfortable in your own skin, the easiest way to feel more comfortable is have a drink or do something else to kind of distract you. It's you mentioned a little bit ago about alcohol being kind of just accessible everywhere. I mean, if you're going to a party, have a drink. If you're going to a funeral, it's sad, have a drink. If it's a
Yeah.
Thursday night and you're bored, have a drink. Why not? Those type of things, and it does limit you or keep you from being comfortable in your own skin, just being you. Mike, you're a beautiful person, as am I, am everyone. And so as you move away from trying to have whatever persona that was, it really does open up, but it takes time. I think we have a mutual friend on X, the Awakened coach, Bradley. Do you know?
Yeah.
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 So and he's been on the show, and he'll come back, and I'd love to have you come back too. But I like that there's certainly commonalities, but there's also maybe some differences, which I think are good because it gives people options, not just the options that you have in your program. But you mentioned earlier this year, I had a couple drinks, I did whatever, and it allows people options of wherever they are in that path and journey. So if they're ready to just stop completely and just retake every single facet, great. If they're like, well, I can see that I want to move towards there, but I'm not sure, or maybe they're not ready, that type of thing. um, the other thing I wanted to comment on, and just for anyone listening, so whatever you use to access sobriety, same thing that I would say to access God, spirituality, or a higher power. And I don't know your spirituality or your disposition on that, Mike, and it's I respect wherever you're at, but however you get there is great. You mentioned about AA, and I know Bradley has some strong opinions on that. It's when you're if a program works for you, that's great. Whatever gets you there, wonderful. But part of what I think he felt about AA, because he went through it, and he's
Yeah.
just completely sober. There's a there's a choice to be made when you decide, okay, alcohol's not for me, and are you going to then turn around and trade it out for like daily meetings or every other day meetings? Like, is that a place that's going to help you? If it does, great. But there's other options like what you provide. I think is a different way to look at it, because it can end up kind of trapping you in another addiction as opposed to what you're in. And if it's worked for anyone, great, that's wonderful. I would just be mindful that being comfortable in your own skin, and knowing who you are, and being okay to feel a little bored for a while, and then be having a coffee and reading a book. That's amazing. That's amazing, Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, and that's it, and that's what I try to provide for people. Really, it is, you know, people just troubleshoot just simple things like that. It's like, what am I doing with the time? What I do with the boredom. Like, I'm feeling a bit of a loose end today. Any suggestions? And it's just
Right.
little bits and pieces like that that I can give just people a bit of a steer on, a bit of advice, and those are the things that I found that I struggled with. But it can be little fixes like that just sort of help keep people on track, help give them something to work towards, and that's what a lot of what I guess my mantra, my creed is it's to ultimately replace alcohol.
Right.
It's not just to give up. You need to give it up and take up other things. I guess you could
Right.
sort of look at it as taking up life, in an overarching sense, but it
Yeah.
can't just be quit, grit and bear it, because you're not going to do that. But
No.
also, interesting talking about the AA. I appreciate there's all the spiritual overtones that are associated to that, and I totally understand that and respect that. Fun enough, when I got into all this, I probably wasn't as spiritual as I am now, and I've become very, increasingly spiritual over the last year or so, and it's been something that I've really enjoyed
Yeah.
um, in itself, that journey. But I do appreciate from where I was from before, say sort of 5 years ago when I really started this out, it intimidated me because I those sort of that crossover, and those sort of connotations, I didn't really know what to do with that or where to place that. So that's also something that I wanted to be able to provide something that's just very black and white. It's about you. It's about alcohol, how you see it, and how you become stronger over it. And that was the big thing for me. And again, some people may disagree with it. I know that a lot of the I guess philosophy that comes with maybe the AA side of things. And again, I'm speaking of not having done that program, but it's, you might declare yourself, say, powerless to alcohol,
Right.
and I think actually a lot of that is the opposite of my belief. So my belief
Yeah.
is the antithesis of that, which is that, you know I'm strong. I am so strong, and I'm stronger than alcohol ever will be. And I want other people to be as well. I want you
Yeah.
to, find that strength and conquer it, because you are so much more. You are so much more than it ever will be. Now, I do get it. It takes, everyone is completely different, and it's a very intricate, delicate,
Yeah.
difficult subject. And all I would advise people to do is just to do what works for you. You've just
That's
got to
right.
do what works for you. If you find it helps, and you're ticking off the days, and you're getting through it, and your life's becoming better off as a result of it, then that is just so amazing, and I love that for you.
Yeah.
But I have found sort of, confidence that I didn't know existed, and power that I didn't know
Right.
existed, and resolve that I didn't know existed. And all of that has been from quitting alcohol. And I've only felt stronger as a result of it, not powerless or helpless. And I see it so differently now. I sort of, I walk through the alcohol aisle in the store these days, and I'm endlessly picking up. I have to walk through it. So where I work in a town called Romsey, right, I have to walk through it to get to where the bottled
Right.
water is and the sparkling water.
Yeah.
And I love walking through it. I sort of I have a little laugh along the way at the advertisements that I see, and all of the
Right.
propaganda that's being pushed, and what's on deal, and all this sort of stuff. And it honestly, it makes me laugh. But part of that is I've realised, getting to that stage is I don't fear it anymore. And now, don't get me wrong, it did take some time, and I had to really evaluate what environments I wanted to be in and who to be around. And I had to really make some sacrifices in that, because it's a big deal, and it
Yeah.
was very intimidating early on. But out the other side of that, and I think once you get so many miles under your belt, you sort of realize that life's a bit different now, and you see things a bit differently now. And part of that seeing things differently for me was that I'm not afraid. I've got this, this life now that I value more than anything, and I see clearly again. I once was blind, and now I see.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a lot of what I'm about. And again, I think if you can sort of build your life, not just around quitting alcohol, but about these other very positive foundations for your mind, your body, and your soul, whether that is, sort of spiritually or religious or not.
Yeah.
You can really create a very sort of wholesome, happy life, and empowering one at that. So that's what I try to sort of help people with. And the first things I do when I work with someone is I will get them to three things in 3 days. So this is it. So day one is a vision. I want you to have a vision, and I want you to write down. This list can be as long as you want it to be. It can be
Right.
a page, 2 pages. It can be 5 bullet points. I don't care. Just write me down a vision of where you see your life. 1 year from now, alcohol
Yeah.
free. Just write
Yep.
it down. What is it? Is it a relationship with your children? Is it the fact that you just hit your dream weight loss goal, or you've read a book a month, or whatever, or you just completed your diploma in X, Y, or Z. So write that down, put that in your wallet, or save it in your phone, and
Yep.
keep it there. And you look at that anytime you get tempted,
Yeah.
anytime you're wavering, and you use that as your resilience, your resolve, because make that vision so powerful you don't want to walk away from it. So that's day one. Now, day two is you're gonna get a replacement drink, so you're not caught out. And this is going to be something like you're going to start drinking soda and limes or whatever it is. That was for me because I like sort of carbonated drinks. So I drink sparkling water, but I used to drink sort of
I do
soda and
too.
limes and stuff like that.
Yeah, I do
Yeah,
too.
and they can pass off when you're out and about as almost like a cocktail
They
type
can.
thing. So
I'll tell you, Mike. I never had club soda before. It wasn't my drink of choice. And my wife and I ordered one. I don't know. It was a couple weeks ago, and she had it first, and she's like, "This is actually really good."
yeah,
And I was like, "Really?" And then I had it, and I'm like, "It is pretty good." Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It's timely that you mentioned about a replacement drink, because some of us may not just even want to switch over to water, but also, like you mentioned, for those of us who feel like, okay, well, I want to feel socially acceptable. What do people think about
yeah,
me? Some people I think feel like, oh well, I don't. I feel that there's a big piece of this of not feeling deserving. I don't deserve to be happy, or this is all I am, or whatever else. And so, if there's ways that you can help ease into that, or just things that you can come
yeah.
to find that are enjoyable, that's beautiful. So that's day two. Go ahead,
So
keep
that,
going.
that that's day two. Yeah, get that replacement drink sorted. And I had issues before when I'd be, I still want to partake in things. Now, don't get me wrong, I shut myself away from things initially for a good
Right.
few months, but I wanted to go to people's birthdays, or I want to go to
Yeah.
that family barbecue in the summer. And I got caught out a few times, not having in my mind or bringing something with me or being prepared. So just set yourself up with that. And the third thing is you need to pick up something. So, and it could be anything. It can be as simple as you want to get back playing video games, or relearn an instrument, or sort of
Yeah.
start those art classes, or read that series from your favorite author, or watch a series, or take a walk every day in nature, or try and do 8,000 steps a day, something like that. Just do something, and have an agenda with it, have a timetable with it, have a focus with it, and work towards it. And that's going to be your your
Right.
counterweight to all of this, and that is going to give you some propulsion. And my, I guess, basis, or reasoning for that, like, hypothesis, is that every time I had a gym session early on, every single time, I would always feel less tempted to drink. And obviously, it sounds so simple, but I just would feel so less tempted and so much stronger in my resolve, because I didn't want to undo all of the hard work and effort I just spent in,
Right.
lifting weights, or training or exercising. That was what it was. So those are the three things that I try to set people up on. And I think they initially create a suitable foundation to help the early stages and to navigate. And then within that, there's exercises every day. So I give someone a different exercise every day. And it's all, very much sort of, pre-planned out, so that they'll be doing various bits and pieces and stuff like that that will only sort of reinforce why they're doing what they're doing. But I think that's really important as well, because that social pressure can be pretty tough as well. I've been in
Right.
situations where people, as recently as this, I'm, sort of 2.5 years now I've been sober, but probably about another 2 years before that I was really working towards being a non-drinker, and people knew that
Right.
when I was out, I might not be drinking and stuff like that. But as recently as my work Christmas do, that's just gone in December last year, there was a lot of pressure on me to drink, and people saying, "Oh, just have one drink," and why didn't you just have a sip of this? And I was just saying, that's just, you think, like to think, give people the benefit of the doubt, but it just doesn't always go down that way sometimes.
Right.
So I'm in sort of situations where people are sort of hassling me to have a drink of a cocktail and stuff like that, and it can be a little bit uncomfortable. It can be a little bit awkward. So
I
um,
want to ask you a little bit about that, if you don't mind. So
sure.
it's interesting to me that, and I think it's probably, well, it could be unintentional and no malice meant towards it. But I think it's possible that when people want to invite you to drink and, oh, just have a sip, just do this, it's almost like they're subconsciously wanting you to rejoin the band, right? So they why not just come back, and why are you moving away? I think they almost feel like you're energetically moving away from whatever they're doing, and they don't understand it. Maybe they feel threatened. I don't know, but I think there's a pull, and I don't think anyone, I don't think people do it intentionally. They don't want to harm you, but in a way, that's kind of holding you back from what you are trying to move towards. It's You mentioned COVID, and I was reflecting as you were talking about that earlier. So I had small kids at the time when that happened, and
Yeah.
prior to that, I was in a divorce situation where I had my kids a portion of the time, and then I had them
Mm.
same amount of time too. And so when I had my kids and it was just me, I wouldn't drink because I just felt like, I want to be there for them. I want to be, available, whatever else. And it also gave me a good reason to not drink, right? I want to be here and be present. COVID hit, and I guess I must have had this like, oh, it's this crazy, um, incredible thing that's happening, not incredible in a positive way. And I somehow just devolved from that. So it became, before I knew it, it was drinking every day, whether I had my kids and no one else was around or not. And so, I think when you're involved in an event kind of like that and you aren't careful, you'll just be like, well, I deserve it. Why shouldn't I just enjoy? I can't go outside, or I can't do this without wearing a mask, and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And it can get out of control. And then fast forward, when I started to try to emerge from that, you mentioned about the gym. I'll share this with you. Not embarrassed at all. Um, I first like bought some home equipment and was working out in a garage, and I still, if I would wake up either not feeling, I was feeling banged up from the night before, or whatever, I would force myself to go work out, which that's
Yeah.
great. I viewed that as, oh well, if I'm going to do this to myself at night, I'm going to at least go work out. Well, then I was okay, not every single time, but sometimes it'd be like, oh, well, if I feel like I need to have a beer, I can still have it while working out, but I'll still work out. Somehow I rationalized that in my mind. That's okay. My girlfriend at the time, my wife now, she's like, what are you doing? Like, what are
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
what could you,
I
I was
know.
trying to rationalize that was okay, which,
That's right.
looking back on it, I'm like, come on, man.
Yeah,
Come
I
on.
know. I remember doing the same thing. I used to smoke at the end of my home workouts, and I just thinking, looking
Right.
back on it now, it's crazy. And
Yeah.
drink beers as well. Just drink beers. And I had a friend of mine who is a PT. I mean, I've always been sort of in and out of fitness or sports sort of thing. Used to play a lot of football growing up, and
Yeah. Soccer,
a
right?
friend
Soccer, football.
soccer, yeah, that's it,
Yeah.
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 So he used to play a lot of soccer back in the day, and but I remember a friend of mine used to be did qualify to be a personal trainer, and he used to take me up the recreation and train me and stuff. I remember after those sessions, I'll be sitting at home drinking maybe three, four cans of beer as my sort of post workout
Right.
treat reward. Yeah,
Right.
because I'd earned it, and that was how I rationalized it in my head.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and football might be the same, but football might be the same, but also I feel like I've heard from like rugby players that say, "Oh yeah, I mean there's, if you're drinking beer, there's carbs in that, and you've broken down your body, so you
Mm,
need something back. So, why not
that's
just
right.
have a few beers for that?" I'm like, "Okay."
Makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah. Fast forward for me, and everyone's past different. You're right about that. So I haven't had a drink since January, and prior to that,
Awesome.
I was certainly enjoying quite a bit. But about last May, so it's coming up almost on a year,
Mm,
I had this overwhelming feeling from something. It wasn't like I heard a voice. It was
yeah,
something internal that said, alcohol is not going to be with you for much longer. So kind of like, I want you to just sort of feel what you're hearing, within you, and just know that. And I observed it, and I thought, okay. And I did a really great thing, Mike. You know what I did? I didn't tell anyone. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't show an early report card of here's what I'm
yeah,
about to do, which
yeah,
I think would have been just repeating the same cycle,
yeah,
right? You get all excited and, oh, I'm going to do this thing. And then you share it with people, and either they are like, yeah, okay, this guy's going to stop, drinking bottles
yeah.
and bottles of wine a night. Like, no. So I still kept, drinking through that. And I just arrived at a point for me that I just didn't want to make the time for it. And kind of like you mentioned, I probably didn't think of a replacement drink as of yet, but
Mm,
other things that I had interest in, but didn't really lean into as much as I would have if I was sober, I started to be able to pick those up. And fast forward, I stopped drinking, and just about a week later, I lost my job. Um, yeah. And what I didn't do was return. I didn't start drinking
that's
again.
awesome.
I
Yeah.
leaned into the other things that were
So,
fulfilling.
yeah, because I'm
Um,
sure everything at that stage, almost, well, not everything, but I'm sure it must have been really pushing you towards doing that. You have to fight against that,
yeah.
against
I
that
would have
addiction.
thought that it would have, but somehow it was a really freeing and releasing thing for me. Um, and so, and it's interesting. I want to get back to you. I'll mention one more thing. So I'm interviewing, and I'll return to the workforce, when the time's right. It's coming up. What I would say is I'd had this interview in a different state in the United States,
Mm,
and it was a great interview, but it also the energy level really felt like it was sort of pulling me down in a place where like it
yeah,
was, I was feeling stressed or whatever. And I remember going to the airport, and I hadn't felt a desire, even really thought about drinking. But I saw, as you walk by the bars, right, you see, people lined up, either just
mm,
enjoying themselves, ready for their flight or something. And I thought about the taste of beer for the first time
mm,
in
mm.
this, time of sobriety. And it wasn't, and I didn't go drink, but I was like, that's interesting that I thought of that, because I
Yeah,
hadn't. I'm like, gee, I must really be, stressed right now, or low energy, that I even thought of it. And I moved on from that, and recovered from it. But it's interesting looking back on it, that I would not have, while I was drinking, think I'm doing this because I'm stressed, or I'm doing this because I think I deserve it. Like, that didn't present to me the way I had
yeah,
thought. So anyway,
yeah.
um,
Yeah, it's amazing, really, and it's amazing that you work out, you get to the almost to the bottom of what your true feelings are and why you feel a certain way,
right,
and how to deal with that. Like, and that is an amazing sort of skill or set of skills to apprehend as a human being. Like the bad news about you losing your job. I mean, that's really stressful situation. It can't have been easy, and it's working out how you can react to that and respond to that in a positive way, and deal with it and cope with it essentially.
right,
Because even though quitting alcohol is a tremendously positive decision, and like that will never change in my eyes, I'll only ever endorse that point of view. You're not going to stop bad things from happening in life; they will
right.
always continue. um, and learning how to navigate those situations, that is really where we instill some true resilience in ourselves. And I've got nothing for admiration and respect for people that can do that, because I know how hard it is. And whether it was good news, bad news, but particularly the bad news, I would be dealing with that with alcohol, without a doubt. It was always
Right.
my go-to instantly. Hence why I was there that morning, drinking at the dining table at whatever, 7:30, 8 o'clock. It was just dealing with stuff that I didn't, negative feelings,
Yeah.
and that was it. And it's amazing, actually. It's just amazing how that works, and it's amazing how when you go down that journey and you self develop along the way, actually, we can cope, and it's not always as bad as we think it's going to be, and there are certain other ways to take the edge off, so
Right.
to speak. Not actually
Right.
just take the edge off, but give us the edge. I mean, I remember one of my posts was saying that drinking alcohol takes the edge off of life. Well,
Right.
actually, quitting alcohol gives us the edge in
That's right.
life.
That's right.
And
Well said. Well said.
yeah, that's it. So to go through those things is amazing. So kudos to you, and credit, to you for that, and
Thank
navigating
you.
that, because
Thank you, brother.
that's a big deal.
I thank you. I appreciate that. I've got some music questions for you. Can we dive into
Sure.
that a little bit? Okay.
Yeah, far away.
So I have a music background too, and oddly as it might be, now I was a band geek, and I don't know if is the term band geek resonate in the UK, or is that just a
Um,
US thing?
I'm not familiar with it. No.
Okay. So a band geek is typically one of those people that they're in marching band, which usually comes out during
Okay.
American football games. They
Yeah.
march or whatever, and they play whatever type of instrument. So I was a drummer. Now,
Yeah.
not to
Oh,
your
cool.
level, of course. I played trap set a little bit, but most of that was all in my, formative years, I'll call it. And I didn't drink up until about 21.
Mm,
Thankfully, at least, or fortunately, I was
yeah.
rather compliant with the law.
And
So,
do
age
you feel that
21. Go ahead.
most people adhere to that age limit in the US? Is that?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I lived a very I'm going to call it sheltered life, like
Mm,
drummers in the drum line in marching band. I think they were one of the biggest partiers. Now, it might not have been alcohol, might
mm,
have been other
mm.
substances, but I just was oblivious. I just
Must be a
was
drummer thing.
maybe, but I just they just never made the time to invite me to a party because I
Mm,
think they just knew that like this nerdy guy is not gonna he's not gonna be a good time. He's gonna remember everything and whatever else. So, but no, I
yeah.
think a lot of high schoolers, at least at the time when I was growing up, and I'm a little bit older than you. I'll be 44 tomorrow.
Mm. Oh,
Um,
happy birthday.
Thanks, thank you.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, um, but yeah, but I didn't know any of that at that point in time. But I also did things. I sang a lot, like choruses, weddings,
Mm,
churches, stuff like that. My point that I'm getting to, and I'll bring you forth to something I did right after I gotten divorced. I decided to join just a local, classic rock band. So not at your level at all, but we would do gigs, once a week, once every couple weeks. And the thing that I really liked about it, which I was surprised, as a singer at least, or at least for me, I couldn't drink because as
mm.
soon as I would start drinking, my throat would get dried
Yeah.
out, and especially in the range I was trying to sing in, like it wasn't possible. And then what better way, Mike, than to turn around and look at my bandmates, like the drummer, the guitarist. I'm sure
Mm.
you know by the end of a gig, like everything's cranked up really loud, like it's so loud you could barely hear anything,
Always.
and I had to be sober, which I ended up really, really enjoying. As far as I was able to throw myself into the music as opposed to throw myself into to drink.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm curious to ask you. I finally got around to a question.
Yeah.
As a drummer and as obviously being a big part of your life that I would think that you still love or think about, do you still play, and when you play and alcohol isn't involved, how does that feel different now than it did then? Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question. Really, really good question. Now, I was playing up until probably last year, in I guess, a rock band as well. We used to play pubs, locally, and the occasional wedding or party. Our
Yeah.
singer actually moved away up north, which basically meant we had to disband or take a take a break from musical proceedings. That may be sort of subject to change, if in due course. But essentially, up until a year ago, I was still continuing to play music, and I was still continuing to, do gigs and do them sober. Um, I think the biggest change for me was in terms of the competency of my playing. That was just the biggest thing. I mean, I used to um, play and play probably half cut
Right.
for the
Your
majority of my gigs. Yeah,
your
and
your fills and your paradiddles and other things that you may wanted to do were a little
yeah,
sharper.
yeah, they are these days. Yeah, but yeah, it's just get progressively worse as the set goes on. But no, I mean the. I used to practice a lot. I used to take it very seriously, and I guess at the height of the apotheosis of my musical career, I would be practicing or trying to practice maybe 3 4 hours a day, 6 days a week, and it was a serious discipline for me. And I actually missed that. Like when I stopped doing all that during my mid to late 20s, I had a void in my life again where
Yeah.
the drinking got worse, because I wasn't practicing so much. And I've now replaced that with the gym and everything like that, which has been a really good um, sort of replacement for it, because actually there's lots of crossover between practicing music and lifting weights. It's sort of very minor increments, and it's about consistency and bits and pieces progressively day in day out, and then you see the results. So I already knew all of that. I knew what was coming as a result of that, because I'd seen that progress with music. But yes, I would with the I guess two sides of my life with my musical performance were, one was being like originals in an originals band and playing my own music in a band,
Right.
and those shows were like, yeah, I guess your sort of your rock shows, and there was lots of drinking and partying involved in that. And I would often play sub optimally at those shows. It
Right.
was always the case, and it was hit or miss. It was a roll of the dice for me. I had enough hours in the locker from practice to be able to
Muscle
get
memory
from
and all
start to
that. You
finish.
can. Yeah.
Yeah, I could always do. It's like sort of driving a car, riding a bike, and that sort of
Right.
thing. I was sort of skilled enough to be able to get through all the music. But there were mistakes in there. I would drop drumsticks. I would, do all that sort of stuff. The drum solos were probably very questionable, if we put them in the set and stuff like that. When I did the professional stuff, when I was playing other people's music for a living, and we're playing the hotels and we're playing show band and all that sort of stuff, that's when things took a different dynamic, because we were playing a lot of the same shows night after night after night, and I could just every beat, every phrase, every bar, every minute of every song was just ingrained in my head. I
Right.
mean, I could
You didn't need
never.
to be on point at all, did you?
No, I just had to be there. And all the guys would be, to be fair, my band was really good, and, had sort of three really talented singer musicians there. And at the end of that sort of season, that contract, I was drinking progressively more through the shows, and I would have maybe a couple wines with dinner. Then I'd take a couple glasses up, put them behind the drum set
Right.
while I was playing, and then I'd sort of hop backstage at halftime, get changed, maybe have a beer or a shot or whatever, take some more stuff up, and towards the end of that season, it was I was finishing the gigs like worse for wear. It wasn't
Yeah.
noticeable to anyone else, but I think my bandmates were picking up on it.
Sure.
Probably the musical side of it was getting a little bit
Slipping.
sloppy.
Yeah.
Um, but music for me was something I always associate with, being a bit more rock and roll, partying. The people I looked up to, I listened to more sort of rock music, heavy metal, that sort of thing, and that's what's always sort of, been my particular sort of genre of interest, and a lot of that has come hand in hand with, you know, people, looking up to rock stars and that way of life. Playing music again with the absence of alcohol, I thought would be something that wouldn't feel as good. And not just playing music amazingly, but listening to
Yeah.
music. So I listen to so much music. It's music for me is how I connect with my feelings, my emotions, and I process things. And you
What
know,
music do you like the most?
um, that's a very good
Or does it
question.
depend on if you're like me or like many people, probably it depends on the season, it depends on the mood and all that. So are you kind of a general sort of across the board, or is there something particular that kind of gets you amped up?
Yeah, so I like maybe sort of post-hardcore music and heavy metal. That's and also sort of stuff that's quite that's a virtuoso. Um, I guess on my Spotify, I've got like bands like just coming in my top
Yeah.
thumbnails: A Day to Remember, Death Havana, a band called Nerve, a band called Our Hollow Our Home, and Hands Like Houses, those Wise Man's Fear, the Amity Affliction, those sort of bands. So
Okay.
that's the sort of stuff I listen to, and a lot of it is quite emotive. And I thought that when I would sort of um, drink. I would often drink by myself at home, numb myself out, and listen to music. And I thought listening to music would be less enjoyable with the absence of alcohol, because there's something in there that made me connect and disappear within it, and
Right.
brought it to life more, made it more emotive and emotional to me. And what this is the craziest thing about alcohol is everything that you think it does the opposite.
Right.
um, Everything. It's a complete paradox, and this is what I
Yeah.
talk about on my X profile and do tweets about and stuff like that. You think it gives you confidence. It doesn't. It takes away your confidence. You build truth confidence through doing things with the absence of alcohol. You
Right.
think, I thought it made me enjoy listening to music more. It doesn't. I listen and enjoy music more than ever now, being present, authentic, feeling it, all that sort of stuff. So you think it makes you go to sleep easier or sleep better? It
Right.
doesn't. It's disruptive to sleep, and
Yeah.
your sleep quality is going to improve drastically with the absence of alcohol. All these sort of things. So you think all of these things can happen. It's going to improve your relationships and your social life. It doesn't. How many
Right.
people end up having arguments, fallouts, disagreements,
Oh yeah.
disruption as a result of alcohol. So I was massively afraid of what the musical side of my life would look like without alcohol. But the reality is that playing it was even more fun. I had that confidence of knowing that I can make that fill, I can do that job, I can, you know, keep in time and be there for everyone else in the band.
Right.
And listening to music has been just as enjoyable, if not even more. And I'd argue that I actually listen to more music these days. It's definitely been a good supplement for me for sort of dealing with feelings and processing feelings and all that sort of stuff. Um,
I wanted to
and
ask
and they're
about
more rich.
Right. Well, and certainly being a drummer, and I know the bassist does, keep a lot of the backbone of it going, but as a drummer, you got to keep everything kind of moving along. And if they're slowing down, you gotta get them to speed up. I don't know, admittedly, I don't know the bands that you mentioned. So I don't know if maybe they're regional, but I'm also older and probably I'm sort of a little bit different I listened to heavy metal a lot when I would say in my youth, but are they similar to say like, and I don't know if you know these US bands, but like Avenged Sevenfold or
Yeah,
like Five Finger Death Punch, things like that? Is it that level or is it a different
yeah,
level?
yeah. I'll definitely, yeah. So Avenged Sevenfold, they're still one of my favorite bands, and
Yeah.
I remember
And
the
it's
album.
funny you didn't mention that in it, but when you mentioned, I don't know, just in this conversation, that was the one that I thought of to mention that what might be knowable enough and seemed to resonate more with what you were saying. So very cool, very cool, Mike. I wanted to ask if there what is what was the inspiration? Unless maybe it's your last name, I don't know. But what is Akeso? How did Akeso sobriety come up? What is the term Akeso? I'm not familiar with it, and I want to know if there's a backstory to it. Can you tell me
Yeah,
about
I
that?
mean, that is a really good question, and it's one off that I don't really sort of talk about. I don't think actually anyone's ever asked me before, apart from divulging it to maybe my family and friends and stuff. But
Are you good to
yeah,
divulge it to all us then? Is it okay that
so
I?
yeah, absolutely. So here
All
we
right.
go. So essentially, I'm quite into history, and I love reading history and learning history. And in particular, I love ancient history. So I love the classics. I love ancient Greece, all the Hellenistic history and the Hellenistic world, as well as the Romans and so on. And Akeso is one of the goddesses of
Okay.
healing. Um,
Goddesses of what? Sorry.
uh, of healing.
Okay.
So one of the ancient goddesses of healing. So that's where it comes from, and my inspiration from that was for the name of the company. It's really from, if you look at companies, other people have lent on similar inspirations, such as Nike, which is the goddess of victory,
Right.
and Hermes. They're sort of like career company. He's the messenger god. So for me, I wanted to do a similar thing, and I did some research. And there's actually a couple of different names I could have chosen from, and I played about with the spelling, and there's different variations and translations, and from where you see it. And
Right.
I ended up going with the Keso. So that's what it means. So there's part of it that's personal to me because it's my love of the ancient myths and stories. One of which I can share very quickly, which is really really sort of
Of course.
valuable, proven
Yeah.
valuable to
Yeah.
me.
Go ahead.
And but also it's the healing element, and that is the healing that comes from the sobriety. That's what that stands for. Yeah, well,
Yeah.
one of the best stories I've ever read, heard, seen videos of is the stories of Heracles, or Hercules as he's more commonly known, and his 12 labors. And the first labor that is set for him is to defeat the Nemean lion, so big African lion with impenetrable, impervious skin that is um, basically um, unable to be sort of damaged or wounded by weaponry or anything like that. And Heracles or Hercules has to go and sort of defeat this lion, and he wrestles it with his bare hands and ends up overcoming it in the end, and defeats it, kills it. And what you subsequently see in many sort of statues and pictures and depictions of him, um, is he's wearing this sort of almost like helmet of a lion's sort of head, and the, I guess, skin, or the main sort of draping over and down his back
Yeah.
as protective armor. And for me, that story really resonated with me, because what I personally see that as is it means that if you can look upon that which you fear and overcome it, conquer it, defeat it, you will carry forever and be forever stronger as a result of it. And
Yeah.
that's what he does. This armor subsequently serves him and aids him in every single trial that he faces thereafter.
You know what?
So
You
we,
know what
we,
makes
we
me
get
think?
stronger
Yeah.
through facing that. Yeah, sorry.
No, no, no. You're good. I wanted to interject, if I may, to say it feels almost like a metaphor for the light and the darkness within us all, right? And the dark can feel really impenetrable, but if you make it your own, not trying to shy away from it, but if you overcome it by making it, by embracing it being part of you, and him putting that, cloak, if you will, over him, made me just think of that you're embracing that darkness but converting it to light for the protection that it can be. That's at least kind of what I had. Continue going. Continue
No,
going.
that's it, and that's a wonderful analogy for it. It really is. By facing hard times, hard things, we become stronger, and we carry that strength of us. So the next time we face it, guess what? It's that
Right.
much easier. We're that much better. And that never leaves us. And that's the beauty of the story. And there's many of these myths out there. And literally reading a book at the moment, Mythos by Stephen Fry, which
Mm,
is really embellishing these wonderful stories. But that is the inspiration for Akeso. It is the goddess of healing. And to me, that is sobriety. Is healing, and it's healing on many levels. It's physical healing. People are aware of that. Your skin looks better. Your taste gets better. Your internal organs and your energy gets better. But then there's the mental element of it as well. You get happier. The brain starts sending the right cues for happiness again, and it
right.
can reduce anxiety and you know all that sort of thing. And then there's the spiritual element and the spiritual healing, which is that's something that's intangible for me. I can't put my finger on that. I don't have words to describe what that is,
Yeah.
but it's something along the lines of feeling at peace again with who you are and your place in the world and the world around you. And that is something amazing, because I remember someone saying to me years ago, probably 5 years ago or something like that, and it was quite it's a deep conversation, and they just said, you just seem so disconnected with the world. And I wasn't connected with me, with others, with where I was. I didn't have a
Right.
place and a purpose, and all of that was alcohol had taken that away from me. It sucked all of that out of me.
Right.
It sucked the life out of me. But I wasn't even it took someone else to point that out to me, because I wasn't even aware of it,
Right.
aware enough to be able to see that myself. And it's only since the removal of that do you realize that actually there's that side of it that comes with it too, just being connected with who we are and other people and the world that's out there. And it's a beautiful thing, like, and that's something that
Beautiful.
again is unmeasurable. There's no metrics that can sort of tell you how that works, and it's completely um, you know subjective to the individual. But that is something beautiful that comes with quitting alcohol as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's the spiritual healing, the mental healing, and the physical healing. All
Beautiful.
three, the
Beautiful.
Trinity, we call it.
I appreciate you sharing the story behind the name of Akeso. I love it. I love it. So, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Is it through X or through your website? I'll put the links obviously to both. Is there any other way that that they can get in touch with you, or are those the two best ways?
Yeah, they're the two best ways. X, I'm active on there all the time, um, and yeah, I literally post every single day. So if anyone wants to reach out, I get messages from people. Sort of people DM me and tell me amazing stories, that things that they've achieved, which is just so cool. And then people sort of fire me off questions and troubleshoot some stuff with me, which I always love. Or literally respond to every comment. I respond to everyone that gets in touch with me. So if
Beautiful.
anyone wants to hear from me or reach out or work with me or whatever, then let's do it. Just put me a message. The website, it comes straight through to my phone anyway. Any inquiries on there, any subscriptions, they come straight in, and I pick those up. I try to deal with everything super quick. That's just how I am. I just I'm a little bit sort of like that in my disposition. I just will be in touch back with you as soon as possible. And I love it. Like, it's been the most fulfilling, that feeling of maybe sort of working with that first customer and seeing their success. I've never experienced anything like that in my life.
Yeah.
It's
Powerful.
invaluable. It
It's
was so
powerful.
powerful, yeah, and it was wonderful to see. And his name's Gerald, absolute legends, from South Africa, and he's still going strong now, still living his best life, and it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
wholesome. It's
That's
amazing.
that's beautiful. I'm so honored, Mike, that you had the trust and willingness to come here and talk with me today. I'd love to have you back. Are you in? You
Yeah,
all in?
absolutely. All in,
All right. Perfect.
all in.
Perfect. I'll upload this out to the places that I do, and then we'll hang on for just a couple minutes, and then we'll pop off here in a moment. So thank you for the time and the trust. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And Mike, hang on for a moment. Goodbye, everyone.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care.